And he applied those lessons when he began dating hometown girl Susan Thompson.
I mean, I proposed to my wife during the Dale Carnegie course. So, I mean, I got my money's worth right during the course. I had the intellect to succeed, but I did not have the persona. I was not put together as a person until I met her.
Buffett was finally ready to put his career in gear. He was picking stocks that others were ignoring, and his stocks kept going up. Little by little, word spread around Omaha that the kid knew what he was doing.
He's devouring every annual report, and they stay devoured. He remembers them, and he's got these balance sheets in his mind so that if a stock gets cheap, 3 years later, he remembers what the fundamentals of the company are. This is a buy now.
In the first 5 years that Buffett was in business, the Dow rose by 74%, while Buffett's investments had gone up 250%. In 1961, at the age of 30, he reached millionaire status. Friends like Stan Lipsey saw that he was still operating as a one-man band.
His study was right off the bedroom in their house. He wasn't even in an office building at that point. And they had 3 kids, and people joke about Warren not knowing his kids, and that's, of course, a great exaggeration. But the fact of the matter, Susie stabilized the family so that Warren could do the studying that he needed.
His wealth was growing rapidly, but you couldn't tell that from the way the family lived. Their home, which Buffett still lives in, was bought over 50 years ago for $32,000. His children all went to public schools. Susie Buffett is the eldest of 3 Buffett children.
We grew up in a way that I think is probably different than most kids if you've got a dad who has what my dad has. I mean, we didn't get cars when we turned 16. We didn't live any differently, really, than most of the other kids we knew.
The biggest change in the Buffett household was that Warren was moving away from the staunch republicanism of his father.
Civil rights had the biggest effect on changing my views on politics. Neither party necessarily covered themselves with glory on it, but it was clear to me that a basic change, a really basic change in civil rights was called for, and the Democrats seemed to be much more attuned to that than the Republicans.
And Buffett was about to make an even bigger change in his professional life. In his 30s, Buffett wanted more than just being a stock picker. He wanted to find companies that he could buy a controlling interest in, and he found one 100 miles away in Beatrice, Nebraska.
Dempster Mill was a company that was really not doing very well. It was in the windmill business. Windmills now have come back, but it was not a good business to be in 50 years ago. But the stock was selling very cheap, so I started buying stock in that.
It was a business that had built up a lot of inventory that it didn't need, and it had a labor force that was too big. So it was a company that just needed to be downsized. And of course, the town that it was in was very small, and it was the main employer.
100 people lost their jobs, and Buffett took the heat.
What it taught Warren Buffett was that he did not want to get involved anymore in businesses that had labor problems, where he would have to fire people, where he would have to get involved personally in the management. He wanted somebody else to do that.
It became another guiding principle of Buffett's evolving master plan. Buy businesses whose management you trust enough to leave in place. Buffett's next big investment also looked like a potential failure. It was a textile mill called Berkshire Hathaway, whose stock was selling for $7.50 a share.
We bought a textile company that was destined eventually to go out of business, just like every other New England textile company did. It was a mistake.
Glenn Tung is a managing partner for T2 Partners.
Berkshire Hathaway was not a good business. They didn't have a competitive advantage that allowed them to earn a sufficient return on the capital invested in the business. So while they were profitable to some extent, that profitability was inexorably being squeezed. When the cash was extracted out of Berkshire Hathaway, it was reinvested. First major reinvestment that was enormously profitable was the insurance business, and that drove everything that Berkshire Hathaway did from then on.
Andrew Fry is a reporter for Bloomberg News.
So he moved the company basically from textiles to insurance. And part of the reason was because the industry itself generated profits, but also because through the premiums that they gathered up from their policyholders, Buffett was able to take that and make his stock investments.
It's called the float. Money comes in interest-free from insurance premiums.